Not some of the things, not most of the things, not a few of the things, not a majority of the things. I am talking about all of the things.
All the things! All the things!
Hi there once again, friends, fans, and foes of Dad Saves America. John Popola here, and I thought I would take this video to dive into your comments from my recent, shall we say, spicy attack on the thugs, as I like to say, known as teachers' unions here in America, and specifically public sector teachers' unions. I didn't mince words about these organizations. I think they're villains. I think they're self-interested crooks, but I'm always happy to hear what you have to say, and so I thought I would dig into the comments and do my best to respond in kind. Oh, and one of the things I was pleasantly surprised to see, and heartbroken, frankly, was how many of you have experience with these organizations firsthand as teachers yourselves. And so I want to highlight some of those as well as my critics. Dang Renbo writes, I'm a 20-plus year teacher. I regularly have disagreements about school choice with other teachers. Their points against generally can be summarized as, some students will be disadvantaged. I can never get across to them that the rich already have school choice and the middle class already have the advantage of decent schools. It's the poor who are imprisoned in failing schools. Shouldn't they have the option to go to a functioning school as well? The response is, we just need to fix the schools they already go to, is always their answer, despite decades of failure to make any positive change at all. I hear you. This is the weirdness of the issue surrounding school. I think it has become a kind of national creed that we deserve to have a kind of universally delivered education system. I don't think that desire is bad. We do want every single kid to have a good education and to come out well educated. The problem is we don't have anything that looks like equal treatment or anything remotely close to equity right now in the current public school system. Our current system leaves the poor behind the most, as you said, because wealthy people can just put their kids in a private school. Yes, they're paying double because they're paying their real estate taxes and then paying tuition. I did it myself. I tried to put my son in schools that weren't monumentally expensive. I don't think any school is worth $30,000 a year. I think that's insane. I think the fact that New Yorkers wait in line to put their kids in $35,000 kindergarten is a sign of psychopathy. It's your money. If you want to blow it on that, I guess that's your prerogative. I want to point out something that's fundamentally the case study for why this mentality, just fix our schools and keep my kids in them. Here's what's actually happening here. You're saying trap all the kids in failing schools because it's better that everyone should fail than for some or maybe even most to escape and have a chance at success. This is the equity mindset. It is a kind of latent communism. I know people don't like that word, too bad. Better to have equality in failure than inequality in success. I think that is cruel and unusual. I look at each and every child as someone with dignity and potential, and we can't save everyone. There is no system that delivers perfection. Question is, how do we get more people to live better? That is the only legitimate, realistic, pragmatic, reality-based question you should be asking. And I think people who say, no, we should just fix the system as it is right now, need to be pushed on for that. Because what they're really saying is, I want to trap the kids where they are. And I want to turn everything into a political fight to the death for this monopoly position that currently exists. I don't know if people that make that argument can be reached or not. I think if they're acting in good faith and really thinking through the implications of what they're saying, maybe they can be. But for a lot of people, it's just a religious posture that's being taken in defense of an institution that they think should be revered and better to all be in prison together than have some people live free while others stay in the prison. One more thing on that front. Competition improves everything, including the existing school. So enabling many of the kids who wouldn't otherwise be able to leave and bring their funding with them will force the existing schools to improve so that that doesn't keep happening until they vanish. That's how competition works in literally every single thing. Every single thing, it works that way. You don't even need that many competitors. It doesn't need to be some perfect utopia of perfect choice. We just need any choice at all. And that's what school choice does for people. That's what school choice enables for parents, especially those who wouldn't otherwise be able to afford the options. And if all else fails, just say, hey, this is what they do in Sweden. Don't you like Sweden? I mean, just appeal to authority. The Swedes already do this nationwide. They have universal school choice for the entire country. So if you consider yourself a sort of progressive-minded social democrat, as the Europeans would more accurately say, that's what Sweden does. All right, let's dig back in. This was your best and most important episode yet. As the dad of 3 elementary-aged girls during the COVID pandemic, I got a front row seat to the immorality of the public school system and teachers' unions in my blue state. I watched as they crushed children and called it social justice. It was a paradigm-shifting season of my life. I hope others hear what you are drawing attention to here. I think that's true. I think that the rank dishonesty and disregard for our kids that took place during the pandemic and the role that has now been studied systematically, the role that the teachers' unions played in keeping kids out of school and locked down should have woken everyone up. It didn't, but it woke a lot of people up. And that's a good thing. And that has put us on a path towards hopefully a better future. And I'm happy to see that that's what happened for you, as painful as it was. All right, let's find somebody who thinks I'm a jerk. From Lori Thomas. He's simply wrong. Public schooling in Massachusetts began in the 1640s. However, the schools were administered by local governments with the help of the congregational churches. The goal in the 1640s was to enable people to read the Bible for themselves, as well as making it possible for them to read the laws of the Commonwealth and take part in New England-style direct democracy. The Prussian model of education was a late import to Massachusetts. Lori is correct about this. Massachusetts led the way on public schooling, or what they used to call common schools. And it did start as early as the 1640s. It was a largely religious-driven movement by the Puritans, believing that, you did need to be able to read the Bible to commune with God. And it was also a way of trying to separate themselves from the Anglican/Catholic traditions. And so, yes, Massachusetts was distinct in that way. It was the leader. But it is also true that the advent of the Prussian model and the structures of Prussian-style education did get led by Massachusetts when Horace Mann adopted them and spread them and instigated that kind of reform in Massachusetts. So I maybe played a little fast and loose with the history, but Massachusetts and the Prussian model do play an outsized role in the transformation of public school in America across the country. I like this one from Aaron. Wait, how is switching classes from social studies to math fascistic? It's not. The main thing I was calling fascistic was the rigidness of the structure as a whole. The mode switching that you're asked to do in typical school calendars and the length of time you get to spend in one mode and one class on average stinks. There's been a lot of work on what it takes to get into a flow state and how much time it actually takes to reset so that you can start to work on a different subject. And all of that goes out the window, especially between subjects that are like left brain versus right brain, like math versus English versus social studies. To do that in 45 to 55-minute blocks with very little time in between is about the worst flow state, creative mind space you could create for an educational experience. I think at a minimum, you need about 90 minutes, often 2 to 3 hours, to really get into a flow state. Some people suggest that you really can only accomplish about 3 things, distinct things, in a day productively, and that the most amount of productive time we typically have is only about 6 hours. And so nothing out of that world of productivity and workplace management seems to have been reflected in our, proto-fascistic Prussian school system. So while the mode switching isn't itself fascist, the whole structure overall is sort of fascist in nature. But, fair enough. From John Stewart, 7025. I am just saying, before you blow up or sink the existing system, you need to have a plan for everybody. Ultimately, the state, the public, will have to hire teachers and build schools because the market will not serve everybody. Remember the history of mail delivery, rural electrification, telephone and internet service? Government has a role. John has made a broader point here, and I think what's interesting is that education for the poor might be the area where we can refute this kind of market failure story more profoundly than in any other area. So there's a book called The Beautiful Tree by a guy named James Tooley. And James was actually like a hardcore Marxist that worked for Robert Mugabe. He's a Brit who, lost his mind, went into communism, headed to Zimbabwe to work for Mugabe, started to realize this is a bad guy with bad ideas. And ultimately, one of the things that brought him to that was studying how poor people in the poorest countries on earth were actually learning. His book, The Beautiful Tree, lays out that in places like India and Indonesia, and actually every desperately poor country he visited, he found that majorities of the poorest families were opting to send their kids with their own cash to a private school. These are people living on $2 a day. And they were paying cash out of their pocket to put their kids in a private school. That private school, in many cases, was basically a one-room schoolhouse that had erected itself because a tutor found themselves filled with students because they were succeeding at helping the kids learn. And why would you do that when in every instance there were free government schools? Because they sucked. That's why. Because these free government schools in the poorest places on earth were horrible. We have all kinds of problems in our public school system. We got massive sexual abuse. We got beating kids and then put into a rubber room at full pay thanks to the teachers' unions. So we've got lots of problems that they have in the third world. But I can tell you something. If you believe that private individuals don't care enough about their kids and others don't want to serve their community such that there won't be options, I have falsified this for you, or I should say James Tooley has in his book and his work, The Beautiful Tree. Everywhere he went, into the favelas of Brazil, he found these micro schools delivering better outcomes, paying cash versus the free public school. I find that to be a powerfully persuasive counterpoint to this notion that there will be market failure and unequal outcomes, therefore government. This is a kind of blackboard economics, sort of poli-sci in academia way to look at things. These are the same kinds of thinking that gave rise to economist types not thinking something like eBay couldn't exist. Because, well, there's asymmetric information. Why would anyone buy a used good off a stranger that they'll never transact from again? There's no way to know. People will just get ripped off. And along comes eBay to prove, actually, no, there's plenty of reasons why people would do that. And it turns out to work pretty well. And a little bit of rating systems and a couple tweaks around the edges. And this thing that was allegedly impossible turns out to flourish and be worth billions of dollars and enable people to build entire businesses. So beware the blackboard theorizing when it comes to the real world. It often just doesn't turn out to be true. Kirk Marisak, 7800 writes, at Dad Saves America, what are your solutions to improve education for middle class and lower income students in this country? I obviously think that we should enable parents to be able to afford to pull their kids from the existing school system and put them in an alternative. I think that is one of the obvious immediate tweaks we should make. Our government takes our tax dollars out of our real estate taxes. School constitutes roughly half of our state budgets. So that money's getting spent anyway. Should it be directed by a political enterprise that's centrally planned and only nominally locally controlled, but guided by the federal government and all kinds of other, hooks and ladders and carrots and sticks? Or should it be guarded by serving a diverse community with a bunch of different options like every other service in our economy? The answer, I think, is fundamentally the latter. Now, school choice, also known as vouchers or education savings accounts, is a mechanism to enable that, but that isn't enough. That opens the possibility that that massive amount of our community's wealth that is confiscated as real estate taxes can be returned to families to educate their kids. We have other things we have to do, though. And I would say that this is not ultimately a question of what can serve poor families versus wealthy families. Although, frankly, wealthy families have plenty of choice. So just about everything I think about when it comes to changing the incentives and structures of education is biased towards working people and poor people. Because rich people can do whatever they want. You want to homeschool, you want to have an au pair, you want to have a rich private school, you can do it if you've got enough money. And most of what I talk about on this channel as it pertains to education is meant to be accessible for everyone, for every family. Get funding to follow the parent's choice, not the government's choice. That's number one. Number two, do not allow crooked crony nonsense to come along with strings attached to that money. That money should work more or less like the other things we have, like Pell Grants and student loans. You can just use it on whichever school you like. Because as soon as you invite a bunch of central planning bureaucrats and special interests to dictate how the money should go or to be upset that you're sending it to a school that I don't like, it's like, yes, that's the point. That's the point. And I think the other thing is, and this is way harder, is we need to blow up the supply chain when it comes to teachers. Because the degree in education is a poison well. That water has toxic waste in it. And that is about the philosophy of victimhood and identity politics that permeates all of the education degrees. And that comes with the fact that really the education degree is a kind of last stop because you flunked out of psychology. So it's not the best and brightest. It's not people who are really excellent. And I know that sounds harsh, but go out there and see for yourself. This is not the sharpest tools in the toolbox, getting a degree in education. Teaching's really hard, and being a teacher is a really important and powerful skill. And this ideology that has been baked into departments of education, this woke, victimhood, intersectional hierarchy of oppressive identities and Paulo Freire and all this other nonsense, the people who suffer from this the most are the people who are subject to appreciate it because it sounds like it's for them, the poor and the marginalized. That is a siren call to the bottom of the sea. It is the path to hell. And we as parents, regardless of our station in life, should be telling our kids not that they are oppressed, not that they are cogs in a machine of a system that is fundamentally corrupt and that the only thing they can really do is become activists in the destruction of Western civilization, which is what this crazy woke ideology is putting forward and embedding in all of the curriculum in both subtle and not so subtle ways. We need to do the thing that we all know our kids need. Empower them through mastery and experience to recognize that they are capable of more than they realize, and to recognize that they are capable of more than anyone else realizes, especially. You and I both know there are things that we have done in our lives that we didn't think we could do. And when you think about that, it's really weird. How is it that I can think I'm not capable of something that it turns out I am capable of? If I don't know myself, does some bureaucrat know me? Does some system of structures that's been designed to fit everyone and therefore fit no one know me? Of course not. So that's why down with the system. There should be no system at all. And that would make all of us a lot better off. I hope this has been helpful. We've got a lot more coming on this subject. We've got an awesome long-form video on the way in the months ahead, working hard on it. It's going to have a lot more B-roll and fancy music and great production values than these Friday videos. So you're going to definitely want to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and make sure you don't miss when that one drops later this year. Well, have a great weekend.